The shuttle from Lumina flew low over the forests of Karth, its sensors scanning the trees below. Inside the shuttle, Captain Revo stood at the window, his compound eyes searching the mist desperately. "Any signal?" he asked. Bora checked the scanner again and shook her head. "Nothing, Captain. His communication device is not responding. Keep searching." It had been 3 hours since Bora and the others had returned to the ship. 3 hours since they had told Revo what happened. The human engineer had stayed behind to distract the Ravager while the others escaped. He had saved their lives. And now he was probably dead. Revo felt something strange in his chest. He had served with many crew members over the years. He had lost some of them to accidents, diseases, and dangers on alien worlds. But this was different. Tejo had chosen to sacrifice himself. He had faced a Ravager with nothing but his bare hands so that others could live. Such courage. Such insanity. Revo did not know whether to admire the human or mourn his foolishness. "Captain." One of the crew members pointed at the scanner. "I'm detecting something. A heat signature. Very faint. Where?" "Near a rock formation, about 2 kilometers south of where we landed earlier." Revo leaned forward. "Take us there. Now." The shuttle changed direction, its engines humming as it flew over the purple treetops. The mist was starting to clear as the day grew warmer, making it easier to see the ground below Dot as they approached the rock formation. Dory suddenly made a clicking sound of shock. "Captain, look." Revo looked. At first, he did not understand what he was seeing. There was something large lying on the ground near the rocks. Something dark and covered with blood. Then he recognized the shape. It was a Ravager. A dead Ravager. "That's impossible," Bora whispered. The shuttle landed in a small clearing nearby. Revo was the first one out, moving faster than his old body usually allowed. The other crew members followed, their weapons drawn. They approached the scene slowly. The Ravager lay on its side, its massive body still and cold. Blood had pooled around it, turning the ground into a dark red mud. Its one remaining eye stared at nothing. And next to the dead creature, lying in the blood and dirt, was Tejo. Revo rushed forward. Tejo, can you hear me?" The human did not respond. His body was covered with blood and wounds. His face was pale. His clothes were torn to shreds. But his chest was moving. He was breathing. He was alive. "Get the medical kit," Revo shouted. "Now." The crew sprang into action. They lifted Tejo carefully and carried him back to the shuttle. Dory applied emergency bandages to the worst wounds. Bora checked his vital signs with a medical scanner. "He's badly injured," she reported. "Broken ribs, internal bleeding, many cuts and bruises. But he will survive if we get him back to the ship quickly." Revo nodded, relief flooding through him. Then he turned back to look at the dead Ravager, the creature that had terrorized this planet for generations. The apex predator that had killed hundreds of travelers over the years. The beast that no one could fight and survive. It lay dead on the ground, killed by a single human with no weapons. "How?" Dory asked quietly. "How did he do this?" No one had an answer. They flew back to the Lumina in silence. Tejo was taken to the medical bay, where the ship's automated systems began treating his injuries. The crew gathered outside the medical bay, waiting for news. Hours passed. Finally, the medical bay door opened and Tejo walked out. He moved slowly and carefully, his body wrapped in bandages. His face was bruised and swollen, but he was on his feet. He was awake. He was alive. The Veluxy crew stared at him in silence. They did not know what to say. What could anyone say to a man who had killed a Ravager with his bare hands? Revo stepped forward. "Tejo." We watched the recording from Bora's helmet camera. We saw what you did." Tejo looked at him with tired eyes. Did everyone make it back safely? Yes, because of you. Tejo nodded slowly. Good. That's what matters. But how? Dory blurted out, unable to contain himself. How did you kill it? You had no weapons. No armor. Nothing. Tejo was quiet for a moment. Then he shrugged and winced at the pain the movement caused. On Earth, we call it survival. You do whatever it takes to stay alive. But it was a Ravager, Bora said. Her voice was shaking. The most dangerous predator on Korath. Nothing kills a Ravager. Everything can be killed, Tejo said simply. If you are willing to pay the price. The Veluxi exchanged looks. They had traveled across the galaxy. They had met hundreds of different species. They had seen things that would amaze most beings. But they had never met anything like a human before. They had always thought humans were weak. Soft skin, no shells. No claws, no venom. They seemed like one of the most fragile species in the galaxy. But now they understood. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. Their bodies might be soft, but their spirits were made of iron. They did not know how to give up. They did not know how to surrender. When pushed into a corner, they did not curl up and wait for death. They fought. They struggled. They refused to die. No amount of armor could match that kind of determination. No amount of claws could defeat that kind of will. Captain Revo stepped forward and did something he had never done before. He bowed his head to the human, a gesture of deep respect among the Veluxi. Thank you, he said quietly, for saving my crew, for teaching us what courage truly means. The other crew members followed their captain's example, bowing their heads one by one. Even Dory, who had been so terrified during the encounter, showed his respect. Tejo looked at them, surprised. I just did what anyone would do. No, Rivo said. You did what a human would do. And now I understand why your species has spread across so many worlds. Not because you are the strongest. Not because you are the fastest. But because you never, ever give up. Tejo smiled slightly, despite his injuries. My grandfather used to say something like that. He said humans are like water. We might seem soft, but given enough time, we can wear down any stone. The crew of the Lumana would tell this story for years to come. They would tell it in space stations and trade posts across the galaxy. They would tell it to their children and grandchildren. The story of the human who killed a Ravager, with nothing but his hands and his will. And every time an alien species thought about underestimating humanity, someone would remember this story. Someone would remember Tejo, standing in a pool of blood, covered with wounds, victorious over the most dangerous predator on Korath. They would remember, and they would be afraid, because in a galaxy full of monsters with claws and fangs and venom, the most dangerous creature of all was the soft, weak human who simply refused to die. The Lumina continued its journey through the stars, its crew forever changed by what they had witnessed. And in the medical bay, Tejo slept peacefully, dreaming of mountains and forests and the voice of his grandfather telling him stories of survival. He had survived. He had won. And somewhere out there, in the cold darkness of space, other species were already hearing the story, already learning to fear the small, soft creatures from a planet called Earth. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Blood dripped from Tejo's forehead into his eyes. He wiped it away with his torn sleeve, never taking his eyes off the Ravager. The creature stood about 5 meters away, its massive body heaving with each breath. Its right eye was damaged and closed, but its left eye burned with a hatred that seemed almost human. The branch in Tejo's hand was cracked and would not last much longer. His body was screaming with pain. His back felt like it was on fire from when he hit the ground. His arms were covered with cuts and bruises, Every breath hurt, but he was still standing. He was still fighting. The Ravager made a deep growling sound. It was angry now. More than angry, it was furious. This small, soft creature had hurt it, had damaged its eye, had refused to die like proper prey should. The creature charged again. This time, Tahoe was ready. He had studied the Ravager's movements during their fight. He knew how it attacked. It always led with its right claw, sweeping across in a wide arc. Then it would follow with a bite from its massive jaws. Tahoe waited until the last possible moment. Then he ducked under the sweeping claw and rolled to his left, the side where the creature was blind. The Ravager's teeth snapped shut on empty air. Before it could turn, Tahoe swung his branch with all his strength at the creature's left rear leg. The impact was solid. He felt the branch crack completely, but he also heard a satisfying crunch from the creature's leg. The Ravager stumbled. It was not a serious injury, but it was enough to slow it down. Tahoe threw away the broken branch. It was useless now. He pulled the small knife from his belt. It was not much, just a simple tool for cutting plants and rope, but it was all he had left. "Come on," he said through gritted teeth. "Let's finish this." The Ravager turned to face him. It was limping slightly on its injured leg, but its fury had only grown stronger. It roared so loudly that Tahoe felt the sound in his chest. Then it charged again. Tahoe did not dodge this time. Instead, he ran forward, directly at the charging beast. It was the last thing the creature expected. They collided. The impact knocked the breath out of Tahoe's lungs. He felt like he had run into a wall of muscle and scales. But in that moment of collision, he did what he had planned. He grabbed onto the creature's neck and held on with all his strength. The Ravager thrashed and bucked, trying to throw him off. Its claws raked at the air, unable to reach him as long as he stayed close to its neck. Its teeth snapped, but he was behind its head, out of reach of its jaws. Tahoe felt his muscles burning. His grip was weakening. He would not be able to hold on much longer. With his free hand, he raised the knife and brought it down on the creature's neck. The blade was too small and weak to pierce the thick scales. It bounced off without leaving a mark. The Ravager laughed again, that terrible rumbling sound from deep in its throat. It thought it had won, but Tahoe was not aiming for the scales. He was looking for something else. His grandfather had taught him that every creature, no matter how armored, had weak points. Places where the scales did not cover. Places where the flesh was soft and vulnerable. He found it a gap between two scales on the side of the creature's neck, where the skin pulsed with the rhythm of the creature's heartbeat. A blood vessel. Tahoe drove the knife into the gap. The Ravager screamed. Not roared, screamed. A high, terrible sound that echoed through the forest. Hot blood sprayed from the wound, covering Tahoe's hand and arm. But the knife was not long enough. The wound was serious, but it was not fatal. The creature still had plenty of fight left. The Ravager threw itself against a tree, finally managing to crush Tahoe between its body and the rough bark. Pain exploded through him. He felt something crack in his ribs. His grip finally broke, and he fell to the ground. For a moment, he could not move. The world spun around him. He tasted blood in his mouth. Everything hurt so much that he wanted to close his eyes and let the darkness take him. But he did not. Instead, he forced himself to roll away, just as the Ravager's claws slammed down where he had been lying. The impact left deep gouges in the ground. Tahoe pushed himself to his feet. His ribs screamed in protest. His legs felt weak and unsteady, but he was still alive. He was still fighting. The Ravager was bleeding heavily from the wound on its neck. Blood pooled on the ground beneath it. But the creature seemed to ignore the injury. Its one good eye was fixed on Tahoe with a murderous intensity. They circled each other slowly. Both were injured, Both were exhausted. Both were running out of time. Teho's mind raced. He had lost his knife in the fall. He had no weapons left. His body was broken and bleeding. Against a healthy Ravager, he would have no chance. But this Ravager was not healthy. It was wounded, blind in one eye, and losing blood with every passing second. All Teho had to do was survive long enough for the creature to weaken. But could he last that long? The Ravager seemed to reach the same conclusion. It needed to end this fight quickly, before it lost too much blood. It gathered itself for one final charge, the most powerful attack it could manage. Teho watched the creature's muscles tense. He saw its good eye narrow with concentration. He knew this was it. The final moment. Everything would be decided in the next few seconds. The Ravager charged. It was slower than before, but still incredibly fast. Its jaws opened wide, ready to bite Teho in half. Teho did not move. He stood perfectly still, watching the creature come closer. 5 meters. 3 meters. 2 meters. At the last possible moment, he dropped to his knees and slid forward, directly under the creature's open jaws. As the Ravager's teeth snapped shut above him, he reached up and grabbed the wound on its neck. His fingers dug into the torn flesh. He found the blood vessel that his knife had damaged, a thick tube that pulsed with the creature's heartbeat. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled. The Ravager screamed again. It tried to pull away, but Teho held on with all the strength he had left. Blood poured over him, hot and thick. The creature thrashed and bucked, but he did not let go. Finally, with one desperate pull, Teho tore the blood vessel completely. The Ravager staggered. Its legs gave out beneath it. It crashed to the ground, its massive body shaking. Blood flowed from its neck in a river, spreading across the forest floor. Teho stood over the dying creature. His body was covered in blood, his own and the Ravager's. He could barely breathe through his broken ribs. His vision was blurry and dark at the edges, but he was alive. The Ravager looked up at him with its one remaining eye. There was no more hatred in that gaze, only something that looked almost like respect. Then the light faded from its eye, and the apex predator of Korath died. Teho stood there for a long moment, swaying on his feet. The forest was silent around him. Even the insects had stopped buzzing. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground beside his fallen enemy. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the gray mist swirling above the treetops. He had won. Teho pressed his back against the rough bark of the tree root. His breathing was fast and heavy. Sweat ran down his face despite the cold air. Through the gap in the roots, he could see the Ravager circling, searching for a way to reach him. The creature was patient. It did not rage or panic. It moved slowly, testing each gap, each opening. Those red eyes never stopped watching him. The Ravager knew he would have to come out eventually. Teho checked his body for injuries. His hands were scraped and bleeding from the rough ground. His left knee hurt from when he had rolled away from the first attack. But nothing was broken. He could still move. He could still fight. With what? He had no gun, no weapon. Just the small knife on his belt and his own 2 hands. Against a creature 3 times his size, covered in armor-like scales. With claws that could cut through metal. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. When you have nothing, use everything. Teho looked around the small space where he was hiding. The tree roots formed a kind of cage around him, protecting him from the Ravager, but also trapping him. The ground was covered with dead leaves and mud. There were a few loose stones scattered around. Above him, the roots twisted and climbed up toward the massive trunk of the tree. If he could climb high enough, maybe he could escape through the branches. But the Ravager was fast. It would catch him before he got high enough. He needed a different plan. The Ravager stopped circling. It lowered its massive head and sniffed at the gap in the roots. Its breath was hot and smelled like rotting meat. Tejo could see every detail of its face now: the thick scales, the rows of teeth, the small scars from past battles. This creature had killed many times before. It was experienced, dangerous, but so was Tejo. He had grown up fighting the cold winters in the mountains, fighting hunger when food was scarce, fighting other boys in school who thought he was weak, fighting his way through life on a planet that did not forgive weakness. Humans were survivors. They had survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and even themselves. They had spread across Earth and then across the stars because they never gave up. They never stopped fighting. Tejo felt something wake up inside him, something old and primal, the part of him that his ancestors had used to hunt mammoths and fight tigers with nothing but sticks and stones, the part that had made humans the apex predators of their own world. "All right," he whispered to himself. "Let's do this." He grabbed the largest stone he could find and waited. The Ravager was still sniffing at the gap, trying to figure out how to reach him. Its front legs were planted on either side of the opening. Tejo moved suddenly, throwing the stone directly at the creature's left eye. The Ravager jerked back with a roar of pain and surprise. In that moment of confusion, Tejo burst out of his hiding spot and ran, but he did not run away. He ran toward the creature. The Ravager was expecting him to flee. It was not expecting him to attack. For a precious second, it hesitated. Tejo dove under the creature's massive body, sliding across the muddy ground between its four legs. His hands grabbed at anything he could find: mud, leaves, stones. He threw a handful of mud directly into the Ravager's face as he slid past. The creature roared again, shaking its head to clear its vision. Tejo was already on his feet, running toward a cluster of rocks nearby. He needed higher ground. He needed anything that would give him an advantage. The Ravager recovered faster than he expected. It spun around and charged after him, its claws tearing up the ground. The distance between them closed rapidly. Tejo reached the rocks and started climbing. His hands gripped the cold stone, pulling himself up. His arms burned with effort. Behind him, he could hear the Ravager getting closer. He climbed higher. 3 meters. 4 meters. 5 meters. The Ravager reached the rocks and tried to climb after him. But its body was too heavy, its claws not made for climbing. It slipped and fell back. It roared in frustration and circled the rocks, looking for another way up. Tejo kept climbing until he reached the top of a flat area about 7 meters above the ground. He lay there for a moment, gasping for air. His whole body was shaking with exhaustion and fear. Below, the Ravager paced back and forth. It was smart enough to know it could not climb the rocks, but it was also patient enough to wait. Tejo looked around. He was on top of a large boulder formation. Behind him, the rocks dropped away sharply into a narrow ravine. In front, the Ravager waited. To his left and right, more trees and thick undergrowth. He was trapped, but at least he was safe for the moment. He sat up and examined his surroundings more carefully. The top of the boulder was covered with loose stones and patches of moss. There were some dead branches that had fallen from nearby trees. Not much to work with, but his grandfather's voice came back to him again. When you have nothing, use everything. Tejo began gathering the loose stones, piling them near the edge where the Ravager was waiting. He also collected the dead branches, testing their weight and strength. One of them was thick and heavy, about the length of his arm. It could work as a club. The Ravager watched him work with those intelligent red eyes. It seemed to know what he was doing. It made a sound that was almost like laughter, a deep rumbling noise from its throat. "Laugh all you want," Taeho said quietly. We'll see who's laughing at the end. Time passed slowly. The mist grew thicker as the day went on. Somewhere in the distance, Taeho could hear the sounds of the forest's strange birds calling, insects buzzing, the wind moving through the trees. It was almost peaceful if you ignored the massive predator waiting to kill you. Taeho tried to think of a way out. The shuttle had taken off. The Veluxi were safe, but he was alone. His communication device had broken during the chase. No one knew where he was. No one was coming to save him. He would have to save himself. As he sat there, planning and preparing, he noticed something about the Ravager. The creature was getting impatient. It had stopped pacing and was now staring up at him with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Its muscles were tense. Its tail was raised high. Then Taeho understood. The Ravager was going to try something. The creature backed up about 10 meters from the rocks. It lowered its body close to the ground, like a cat preparing to pounce. Its powerful legs bent, storing energy. No way, Taeho breathed. It can't jump that high. The Ravager jumped. The power in those legs was incredible. The creature launched itself into the air like a missile, its claws extended toward Taeho. For a moment, it seemed to hang in the sky, a massive shadow against the misty gray clouds. Taeho grabbed his pile of stones and threw them as hard as he could. The stones hit the Ravager in midair, striking its face and chest. One stone hit its right eye. The creature screamed and twisted in the air. It missed the top of the boulder by less than a meter. Its claws scraped against the rock face as it fell back down, leaving deep scratches in the stone. It landed hard on the ground below, stumbling and shaking its head. Taeho did not waste the opportunity. He grabbed the heavy branch and jumped. It was crazy. It was suicide. But it was also his only chance. He landed on the Ravager's back, his legs wrapping around its thick neck. The creature roared and bucked, trying to throw him off. Taeho held on with all his strength. His left arm wrapped around the creature's neck while his right hand raised the heavy branch. He brought the branch down on the Ravager's head. Once, twice, 3 times. The impact sent shocks through his arm, but he did not stop. The Ravager threw itself against the rocks, trying to crush him. Taeho rolled off just in time, hitting the ground hard. Pain exploded through his back and shoulders, but he was up again immediately, the branch still in his hand. The Ravager faced him, blood dripping from wounds on its head. Its right eye was swollen shut from the stones. They stood there, human and beast, both injured, both exhausted, both refusing to give up. The fight was not over yet. Taeho stood perfectly still. His eyes stayed fixed on the 2 red lights glowing in the darkness between the trees. His heart was pounding in his chest, but his body did not move. He had learned this lesson long ago in the mountains of his home country. When a predator watches you, do not run. Running tells the predator that you are prey. The red eyes blinked once. Then they moved. Slowly, very slowly, a massive shape began to emerge from the shadows. The Ravager was bigger than Taeho had imagined. It walked on 4 thick legs, each one ending in claws as long as his forearm. Its body was covered in dark scales that looked like they were made of black metal. A long tail dragged behind it, heavy and powerful. Its head was wide and flat, with a mouth full of teeth that curved backward like hooks. And those eyes, those terrible red eyes, burned with a cold intelligence. The creature was not just a beast. It was a perfect killing machine, built by millions of years of evolution to hunt and destroy. Taeho slowly turned his head toward the others. Bora and the 3 other Veluxi were still working, their backs to the forest. They had not seen the creature yet. Bora, Taeho said quietly. His voice was calm and steady. Do not turn around. Do not run. There is a Ravager watching us. Bora froze. Her compound eyes went wide, but she did not turn. She was smart enough to understand where. She whispered through her translator. Behind me. In the trees. About 30 meters away. The other Veluxi heard this and stopped moving. Fear spread through the group like a wave. Their bodies began to shake. One of them, a young male named Dory, made a small clicking sound of terror. "What do we do?" Bora asked. Her voice was shaking now. Tejo thought quickly. The shuttle was about 200 meters behind them, back in the clearing. If they ran, the Ravager would catch them easily. The creature was built for speed, but if they stayed still, it might attack anyway. "Do you have your weapons ready?" Tejo asked. "Yes," Bora said. But the captain said they would not work well against a Ravager. "The scales are too thick." Tejo nodded slowly. He had expected as much. "Then we need to move slowly. Very slowly. Back toward the shuttle. Do not run. Do not make sudden movements. If it charges, scatter in different directions and try to reach the shuttle. What about you?" Bora asked. Te-Ho did not answer. He was watching the Ravager. The creature had stopped moving. It was studying them, its head tilting from side to side. It seemed curious, as if it had never seen creatures like them before. "Go," Tejo said. "I will stay here and keep its attention." The Veluxi began to move backward, step by careful step. Their 6 legs made soft sounds in the wet ground. The Ravager watched them, but it did not follow. Its red eyes stayed focused on Te-Ho. Why was it not attacking? Tejo wondered. Then he understood. The creature was smart. It was waiting to see what he would do. It was testing him. On Earth, Tejo had grown up in a small village near the mountains. His grandfather had been a hunter, and he had taught Tejo everything about the wild. How to track animals. How to read the forest. How to stay calm when death was close. A predator respects only 2 things, his grandfather had told him once. Strength and patience. Show it that you are not afraid, and it will think twice before attacking. Tejo took a slow breath. He straightened his back and looked directly at the Ravager. He did not blink. He did not look away. The creature made a low rumbling sound, like thunder in the distance. Its tail swished back and forth through the mist. It took 1 step forward. Behind Tejo, the Veluxi were moving faster now. He could hear their panicked breathing, the click of their legs against the ground. They were about halfway to the shuttle. The Ravager took another step forward. Its claws sank into the soft earth. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing rows of curved teeth. A thin line of drool dripped from its jaw. Tejo felt his body prepare for battle. His muscles tensed. His hands became fists. Adrenaline flooded his system, making everything seem sharper and clearer. This was the ancient response that had kept humans alive for millions of years. The response that made them one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy, even if they looked weak and soft. "Come on," Tejo whispered to himself. "Let's see what you've got." The Ravager heard him. Its eyes narrowed. And then, without warning, it charged. The speed was incredible. One moment the creature was 30 meters away. The next moment, it was almost on top of him. The ground shook under its weight. The air filled with the sound of its roar, a deep, terrible sound that seemed to shake the very trees. Tejo moved. He did not think. He did not plan. His body simply acted, following instincts that were older than civilization itself. He threw himself to the side, rolling across the ground as the Ravager's claws slashed through the air where he had been standing. The creature missed. It skidded to a stop, tearing up the ground with its claws. It spun around, faster than something that big should be able to move. Behind them, Tejo heard screaming. The Veluxi had broken into a full run now. They were racing toward the shuttle, their legs moving in a blur. "Go!" Taeho shouted. "Don't look back." The Ravager heard the shouting. Its head turned toward the running Veluxy. Its red eyes lit up with hunger. Prey. Running prey. No. Taeho grabbed a rock from the ground, heavy stone about the size of his fist, and threw it at the Ravager's head. The rock hit the creature's snout with a loud crack. The Ravager turned back to Taeho. Its eyes were no longer curious. They were angry now. Very angry. "That's right," Taeho said, his voice steady. "Look at me. I'm the one you want." The creature roared again and charged. This time, Taeho did not dodge. He ran, but not toward the shuttle. He ran toward the trees, toward the thick forest where the creature's size might slow it down. The Ravager followed, crashing through the undergrowth like a storm. Trees shook. Branches flew through the air. The ground trembled with each step. Taeho ran as fast as he could. His lungs burned. His legs screamed with effort. But he did not stop. He could hear the creature behind him, getting closer and closer. He ducked under a fallen log. The Ravager crashed through it like it was made of paper. He jumped over a stream. The creature splashed through it without slowing down. Then Taeho saw it a gap between two massive tree roots, just big enough for him to squeeze through. He dove for it, sliding through the narrow space as the Ravager slammed into the trees behind him. The creature roared in frustration. It tried to reach him with its claws, but the gap was too small. Its arm got stuck between the roots. For a moment, they were face to face. Taeho looked into those red eyes and saw nothing but rage and hunger. The creature wanted to kill him. It needed to kill him, but it could not reach him. Not yet. Taeho heard a sound in the distance, the shuttle's engine starting up. The Veluxy had made it. They were safe. He smiled, despite everything. His grandfather would have been proud. The Ravager pulled its arm free and circled around the trees, looking for another way to reach him. The hunt was not over. It was just beginning. The ship called Lumina floated through the dark space like a silver fish in a black ocean. It was a trade vessel, big and slow, carrying goods from one end of the galaxy to the other. The crew was made of Veluxy, a species of insect-like aliens with 6 legs and large compound eyes that could see in all directions at once. They were peaceful traders, not fighters. They had never needed to be fighters. But there was one member of the crew who was different from the rest. His name was Taeho, and he was human. Taeho worked as an engineer on the ship. He fixed broken machines, kept the engines running, and made sure the life support systems worked properly. He was good at his job. The Veluxy liked him because he was quiet and did not cause problems. He was also very useful because humans could work in conditions that would kill most other species. The captain of the ship was named Revo. He was old for a Veluxy, and his shell had turned from bright green to a dull gray color. Revo had traveled across the galaxy many times. He had seen many strange things, but he had never understood humans. They were so soft and weak-looking. They had no shells, no claws, no venom. Their eyes could only see in one direction. How did such creatures survive on their home world? One day, the Lumina stopped at a planet called Korath. It was a wild world covered in thick forests and tall mountains. The air was thick with mist, and strange sounds came from the trees. The Veluxy needed to collect water and some rare plants that grew only on this planet. The plants were valuable for medicine. Rivo called a meeting in the main room of the ship. All 15 crew members gathered together. Taeho stood at the back, his arms crossed over his chest. He was taller than the Veluxy, and his skin looked strange compared to their hard shells. "We will go down to the surface in 2 groups," Rivo said. His voice came through a translator device that hung around his neck. "Group 1 will collect water from the river. Group 2 will gather the plants from the forest edge. We must be fast. We must be careful. One of the younger Veluxi raised a leg to ask a question. Captain, what about the Ravager? The room became very quiet. Tejo noticed that all the Veluxi had become still. Their compound eyes seemed to darken with fear. The Ravager, Rivo said slowly, is the apex predator of this world. It is a beast of great size and power. Its scales are like armor. Its claws carry poison that can kill in seconds. It is fast, strong, and smart. Many crews have lost members to the Ravager. Tejo leaned forward slightly. How big is it? Rivo turned to look at the human. It is 3 times your height when it stands tall. It weighs as much as 10 of you. Its teeth can bite through metal. The other Veluxi made clicking sounds of agreement. They were clearly afraid. We have weapons, another crew member said. Energy guns and shock sticks. Yes, Rivo agreed. But the Ravager is fast. Very fast. If it attacks, we must run. We cannot fight it. No one fights a Ravager and lives. Tejo said nothing. He just nodded his head slowly. The Veluxi watched him, wondering what he was thinking. Humans were hard to read. Their faces did not show emotions the same way Veluxi faces did. The next morning, the 2 groups prepared to go down to the planet's surface. Tejo was assigned to Group 2, the one that would gather plants. He wore a simple suit to protect him from the cold air and the wet mist. He carried a bag for collecting samples and a small knife on his belt. The Veluxi in his group carried energy guns and wore heavy armor. The shuttle took them down through the clouds. Tejo watched through the window as the forests of Karth came into view. The trees were massive, taller than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Their leaves were dark purple, and strange vines hung from their branches. The mist was everywhere, thick and gray, hiding whatever lived below. The shuttle landed in a small clearing near the edge of the forest. The door opened and cold air rushed in. Tejo stepped out first, his boots sinking into the soft ground. The air smelled strange, like rotting fruit mixed with something metallic. The 4 Veluxi in his group came out after him. Their leader was named Bora, a female with bright blue markings on her shell. She was younger than Rivo, but had a sharp mind and quick reflexes. Stay close together, Bora ordered. We move to the forest edge, collect the plants, and return. No one goes alone. No one makes loud noises. Understood? Everyone agreed. They began walking toward the tree line. The forest was even more impressive up close. The trees rose into the mist like giant pillars. Strange sounds echoed through the air, clicks, whistles, and deep rumbles that seemed to come from far away. Tejo felt the hair on his arms stand up. His body knew danger was near, even if his mind did not. The plants are over there, Bora said, pointing with one of her legs. The ones with the yellow flowers. We need to fill 3 bags. The group spread out slightly, but stayed within sight of each other. Tejo knelt down and began picking the plants carefully. They were small and delicate, with bright yellow petals and thick green stems. He put them gently into his bag. As he worked, he listened to the sounds around him. Something felt wrong. The forest had become quieter. The clicks and whistles had stopped. Even the wind seemed to have died down. Tejo looked up. Through the mist, he could see the shapes of the Veluxi nearby. They were still working, unaware of the change. But Tejo had learned long ago to trust his instincts. On Earth, humans who ignored their instincts did not survive. He stood up slowly. His eyes scanned the tree line. The mist was thick, but he could see shapes moving in the shadows. Or was it just his imagination? Then he saw it. 2 eyes, glowing faint red, watching from the darkness between the trees. They were large, each one the size of his fist. And they were looking directly at him. Tejo did not move. He did not breathe. He just stared back at those red eyes, feeling his heart beat faster and faster in his chest. The Ravager had found them, and the hunt was about to begin.